But a lot of people just take that as, fuck this, my AD carry sucks, and then they get tilted, and then all the learning in their brain shuts off. And then as soon as they see something in their next, 10 games where the AD carry does something wrong, the tilt just gets triggered again, and immediately we go into the tilt mindset and nothing's learned. And it's this vicious cycle that a lot of players have. I have it. Every player that in League has it. And it's about breaking that cycle, which it sounds. Hey guys, before we get into today's profile review, if you're interested in getting your own profile reviewed, just like the one you're about to watch, or interested in the things I talk about in terms of coaching, personalized coaching solutions, please check out the links in the description below. Let's get into the video.
No, but it's just a bad thing to die a lot in the sport.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or not.
Yeah, generally when I see quite high deaths like this, you're most likely doing some things wrong. But a 6 death, like anything like 6 deaths or lower is usually okay, depending on the game. But yeah, when you have deaths that are quite high, you should definitely be a little bit concerned about that, because that is definitely a sign that you're not really understanding what to do in certain situations. Because the only reason we die in League of Legends is either we know we're going to die and we're trading, our life for something, or we simply don't know what's going on. And you really shouldn't be trading your life for something you're going to die for 9 times a game. But the chances are, it's much more likely that you just don't know what's going on and then you end up dying because of it.
That's about what's happening, yes. Because some spells, like some champions, I still don't know what they will do.
Yeah.
I'm still not aware of their what the spells will do. If the spell is AoE or not.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm still experimenting, because I only have 200 games or something.
Yeah. And that's the toughest part of League for new players is, you don't know what that other person does, that other champion sometimes, or you kind of know what they do, and then they do something you haven't seen before, and you're like, what the hell was that? Okay. So you're doing quite well. The main issue you were saying is you feel like support isn't a role you can climb to gold on. Is that correct?
Yeah. Because as you see, most of my games, either the mid or the top, they don't do quite well. So I was thinking maybe something I can carry with, something I can have an impact with. Because at this bracket, I don't know if support is the ideal role to pick.
Yeah. So firstly, there's no better role to pick to climb out of low elo other than the one you enjoy the most and you're the best at personally. So you can think mid lane is a better role, top lane, jungle, these are all better roles. But if you can't actually play that role, you're not going to climb faster. And so the question really becomes, can you climb out of bronze as a support? Yes. Can you climb out of silver as a support? Yes. It's more about you personally. Well, what is the role you're best at? Because that's going to be the role that you will probably climb the fastest out of. So what I'd recommend, if this question's in your head, maybe start playing some mid lane games and start getting a feel for it. Because one, you'll learn a lot of new things that you didn't think about. And two, you might actually find that your mid lane, you are a much better mid lane than your support. And therefore you can influence games more and win games more. But support and jungle are usually, almost always in most games, the highest impact roles. Support and jungle usually have the most outcome-driven results as players in games, no matter what rank there is. No matter what rank you're in.
That was a question I wanted to ask you. I've been watching on YouTube some, for example, since I spam a lot of Morgana and Sono, I've been watching a challenger player playing Morgana. He's doing stuff completely different than I am. So I told you before, I played Dota, right?
Yep.
So he's doing stuff like I would do in Dota, but here I would not do. For example, there's something called ditching the carry. So for example, I leave my carry alone and go, so he can get solo experience.
Yeah.
I was told a lot here that no, you cannot do this. Don't do this. So you have to be in the lane 24/7.
Yeah. Why do you think he can do it and you can't?
I'm not sure, but then again, I will ask the other person about this. He said the Challenger plays a completely different game than you guys play, so don't do like them.
Yeah.
So
It's like watching professional football and then watching your amateur football you play on the weekend. It's almost two different sports, right? They're playing the same game, but it's two completely different play styles. And the same goes with that kind of challenger Morgana. He can leave his AD carry because he knows his AD carry is a challenger player and therefore can 2v1 while he goes and roams. Whereas when you're playing in bronze, if you leave your bronze AD carry, they're probably going to get tilted because they simply don't understand the concept of like leaving the AD carry to go roam.
so for that, I don't know what to do to impact my game. If I can't go gank mid, I can't go top, for example.
Yeah. So you just need to choose your time as a lot more smarter. So I've taught many bronze supports how to roam. It's all just about when you do it, not I think as a challenger support you can roam a lot more than a bronze support, but bronze supports still have key moments in the game where you can roam. And in this call I can't really show you exactly where that is or anything like that, but you can definitely roam as a bronze support. It's possible. And you can be taught that or you can learn it yourself. You're just probably not roaming at the right times and you're not roaming for the right outcomes is most likely what's happening. Because when we roam correctly, it almost always works out because that's the definition of a roam. It works out. Whereas if you roam and it goes wrong, so if your AD carry dies because you roam, well, yeah, that's kind of your fault because even though you roamed, you left your AD carry at the wrong time. You should always leave your AD carry at a time where they can't die or they're very, very safe. And then if they die, it's literally because, they did the dumbest thing ever, which sometimes that will happen in your solo queue games.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so what tips can you give me so uh, I can improve on myself as a support player and solo carry my games, even when my AD carry isn't playing his best or something.
Yep, so I wouldn't look at the game like that. I'd more look at the game like you're going to win 33% of your games, you're going to lose 33%, and there's that 33% that you can actually really change the outcome on. Because League, there's 10 people in the game, so you're not going to be able to win every game. You're not going to be able to hard carry every game where your team loses really hard. So what I'd rather you focus on is like consistency throughout your gameplay. So, focusing on dying less as an example. So one of the biggest things you need to fix firstly is you need to die less. And one of the best ways to do this is to play more games so you understand your limits and the enemy limits. But also, if you can watch your replays in high death games. So if you go through this 3-9 Morgana game and you look at every death you had and you rewind 60 seconds before you die and logically look at the steps the enemy took to kill you and the mistakes you made leading up to your death, you will learn so much. I guarantee these 9 deaths, there are patterns every game that you're doing the same. You're dying in the exact same ways, whether it's going to be a jungle gank, whether it's going to be dying to the enemy AD carry or, going into early in a team fight. You need to figure out why you're dying so much, and then you need to work on that as one of your biggest priorities.
Maybe a lot of them, my issue is I'm always playing aggressive.
Yeah, and Sona and Morgana aren't necessarily aggressive supports. If you want to play always aggressive, think champs like Pyke as an example. Think champs like Blitzcrank, Zyra, Xerath, these kind of champs that are damage dealers. You're playing almost enchanter supports, where they're very much about healing and shielding with a little bit of damage as well. So if you want to play that aggressive playstyle, think about adding a more aggressive support into your champ pool.
Right. So for enchanters, my job is just to stay behind my team. I don't need to initiate the fight.
No, never. Sona is all about, healing and supporting your carries. And then your ult should be, sometimes, yes, it can be a catch mechanism, but it should never be you leading the fight with your ultimate. Unless you're getting a pick. So like you're catching someone out with your ult because they stepped up too high, as an example. But you should not be like looking as, a tank Malphite looks to use your ult to engage the fight, because you're the squishiest, lowest health champion in the game. That's not your job. Your job is to sit back, and then if someone jumps on your AD carry or your carry, like a Talon, that's when you use your ult to defend them.
So I do a lot of mistakes. I usually jump first and Dragon Pit and use my ult.
Yeah,
power.
yeah.
So I should avoid that.
Yeah. It sounds like you're just forcing things too much. And the problem with forcing things is in your head, you've got this really clear picture of what you want to do, but your team don't have any idea what you're trying to do. And then you go in and die, and then you're like, where the fuck's my team? Like, we're meant to be doing this, but only in your head does that become the correct play. But in everyone else's head, they're like, wait, what the fuck just happened? I wasn't even watching, or I didn't know he was going to do that. And so it's really hard for champs like the champs you're playing to be that engaged as well.
I understand you, because it's a fast-paced game, so you have to make quick decisions sometimes. And the communication is quite difficult in League, so yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You should make more safe plays.
Yeah. And think more about like consistent gameplay, like playing good, consistent League of Legends. Like your laning phase should look as similar as possible every single game. Sit back, heal up, be aggressive when you need to be, don't die, just get gold. Like, and I know in bronze you're going to get really bad AD carries, you're going to get camped by the jungler, and that shit happens, and that's when you really learn the hard things, but you learn so much during those games, because you're like, okay, how do I play at this disadvantage? Like, how do I play with all this adversity and things going wrong? And that's usually where we learn a lot. But a lot of people just take that as, fuck this, my AD carry sucks, and then they get tilted, and then all the learning in their brain shuts off. And then as soon as they see something in their next, 10 games where the AD carry does something wrong, the tilt just gets triggered again, and immediately we go into the tilt mindset and nothing's learned. And it's this vicious cycle that a lot of players have. I have it. Every player that in League has it. And it's about breaking that cycle, which it sounds like you already do, but it's really important to be aware of that.
Yes, everyone makes mistakes. We're all bronze for a reason, so we have to accept that we all have mistakes, and hopefully get better with it.
Exactly, and also
tilted doesn't help to win the game.
Yeah, exactly. And also think if you think you're better than a bronze player, well, your team is eventually going to win more games than the enemy team, right? Because the enemy team has 5 bronze players on their team, but your team has 4 bronze players plus you. So the chances, one, of your team getting the troll is lower, because if you're never trolling, you remove a spot for the troll to get into your team, right? Whereas the enemy team always has 5 spots for the troll, because you're not on their team.
Yes, but you see, the issue is, for example, when the top lane, this usually happens a lot in my games. Like, my top lane, for example, set goes 0-4, 10 minutes into the game, versus Irelia.
Yeah.
So, in this situation, everyone starts flaming the top lane for feeding, and the jungle tilts at him and stops helping him.
Yeah.
So as a support, what's my role here? What can I do? Do I just leave him to feed, or should I just ignore my AD carry and go top with him?
Yep.
Like,
it's a good question.
This stuff I need to learn. Like, what do I do in this situation?
It's a good question. Again, without watching the game itself, it's hard to make the exact right call for what that situation is. But in general, the support wants to latch on to your teammate who is most likely to win the game. So if your top is 0-4, but your jungler is maybe 3-1, well, maybe you shouldn't be focusing at all about the top, but trying to figure out how you can help out the jungler, as an example. Or maybe your mid lane is 2-0, even though you're set 0-4. Or maybe your AD carry is doing quite well. And so it's really, really dependent on the game itself of who in your team, and you need to press tab and think about this, who in your team is the most likely to win this game for you. And then you latch onto them. Because if you say it's you, well, then that's a bit of an issue, because you need someone else to help you win the game because you're playing a support champion. So it's usually about identifying whoever, even if they're all kind of shit, whoever you think is the best, that is probably your best hope to win the game. And being able to make that decision correctly is one of the most important concepts when you're losing the game as a support.
Alright. This one I didn't know about. I just because due to my knowledge, I thought like if Elaine is having a disadvantage, my job as support is to support the flame.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it's right in principle, but at a certain point, a 0-4 champion is just so much weaker than their enemy that even if you go up and help them, chances are that enemy can now maybe even 2v1 you. And so then you're not only getting them even further behind, you're getting yourself behind as well. So that's why we usually try to either latch on to the people who have the most potential, or we stop the 0-4 thing from happening in the first place by, getting early roams off before the disaster happens. But again, that's like predicting the future, so you're not always going to get that right.
Right, I get you. So let's say, for example, you said that I just latch to the person in my team that's having the most impact, right?
Yep.
So, for example, let's say that person is my jungler.
Yep.
Like generally in my games, no one communicates.
Yep.
It's difficult. The chat they use it to tilt normally, so I
Yep.
try to avoid the chat.
Yep.
So how do I know that this jungler wants to go on mid, for example, or wants to go on top or bot, so I can join them? I
Yep.
can't just stay with them in jungle all the time. That would be unrealistic.
No, for sure. So generally, pre-14 minutes, if you're unsure where you should be as a support, you should be bot lane with your AD carry. Now, as soon as platings fall, that's when you and the AD carry should generally transfer to mid lane. And then you can basically be wherever the jungler is, as long as your starting point is in mid lane. You can go wherever the jungler wants to go. So you just watch the jungler, if he's the carry as an example, and oh shit, he looks like he's leaving his jungle now and going for Dragon Pit. Okay, cool. I'm going to try and get there. Is it safe? Cool. I'm going to go rotate over and try and help it. And it's not gonna work every game, but that is like kind of the logic you have to think about, and you have to like keep applying that logic in your games, and you'll eventually figure out, oh, this is how to play it, this is what to do, this is how I should play it with my playstyle.
What about wording? Like for wording, I try to buy control words generally in all my games lately.
Yep.
So, for words, like what is there any average number of control words I can buy per game?
Yep.
Or that doesn't make a difference?
Great question. So yes, I generally recommend one control word every 5 minutes of a game. So for example, if you play a 24-minute game, you should have bought 5 control words. Now that's quite a high number to some people, but it's also a low number to other people. So what I would prefer you to do is just to start buying control words. Like you're buying 1 here, you're buying 3. Let's try and average like 2 to 3 to 4 control words a game. And control words are really about moments in time that you need information on, like around certain places. So like control words are really good for dragons, barons, and gank setup, right? Or gank defense. So think about not so much about the number of control wards, but more about what your team wants to do and whether or not a control ward will help you carry out what your team wants to do or what you want to do.
Right, so it's safe to put the control ward usually aggressive, so I know where the enemy's jungler is.
It's,
so for example,
it's more... Right. No. Think about it more strategically. Think about putting your control ward strategically, not necessarily aggressively. So strategically is like, I know Dragon is spawning in 30 seconds, therefore I'm going to put the control ward in Dragon Pit so that we get vision and we deny the enemy vision. Because it's all about information. It's just an information game. We have information on the Dragon that now the enemy team doesn't.
And how do I understand power spikes? Like, for example, in my games, when do I understand, like, we have a better power spike on them currently?
Yeah. So again, that's volume of games. But the second thing you need to do is press tab a lot more. So every time you come back into lane or come back from a team fight, you need to press tab and look at people's items. And simply, but just by looking at people's items and going, oh my god, the enemy top laner has 4 items and our ally top laner has like 2.5. Well, fuck, that top laner is power spiking and they're going to be very strong in the next fight. And then that information is usually enough for you to go, okay, shit, I got to play a bit safer. I really got to protect my AD carry this fight, as an example. But again, a lot of the things you're trying to learn, you need to learn through volume of games and then just being aware of them. So power spikes are a really good thing. It's just knowing when someone's completed an item. That's usually a pretty big power spike for most people. The other power spike are levels. So like think Zed at level 6, that's a really big power spike for him because he has his ultimate. Kassadin at level 16 is a really big power spike, similar to Kayle, because their ultimate and their champion is very like scale heavy. And so once they hit that level 16 where they get their 3rd level of ultimate, that's where they become really strong. Sona generally becomes quite strong once she gets her first mythic. But all this you have to learn through experience of like, oh shit, I feel really strong. Or, oh my god, that champion feels so strong. Why? Asking yourself why that champion just 1v5'd your whole team. And then you look at their items, you look at their levels, and you go, oh shit, okay. When Katarina hits level 11, she can like kill our whole team. And that's a power spike.
Okay, so for now, you advise me to. What's your advice for me as a support? Should I play more for my bracket? Should I learn more crowd control support like Leona, or should I just focus on enchanters?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a champion like Lux or Zyra you may enjoy, or Xerath. I think you should try one of those champions out because you like to play aggressive, but you don't necessarily like to play like Leona. So the cool thing about like Xerath, Zyra, and Lux are they can deal a lot of damage, but also play somewhat defensively because they've got a lot of crowd control. Whereas a Leona can only play aggressively and defensively, but they never deal damage. So that's the really cool thing about like a Zyra or a Lux or a Xerath is you can kind of do a bit of everything. You're a lot squishier like a Sona, like a Morgana, but you have a lot of damage output. So I would like to see you maybe have a couple of games on Lux. I think Lux is a really good starting point. Have a couple of games on Lux. You could even try out Lulu, maybe, because she's quite similar to like a Sona in the fact that you like shield and protect your AD carry, but you can also deal quite a lot of damage with your picks. But yeah, I would suggest maybe bringing out a Lux or something into your champion pool. Because Lux is similar playstyle to Morgana, so you should pick her up fairly quickly.
Alright, so basically I'm not doing something wrong just playing 2 champions, right? Like,
yeah.
I sometimes feel guilty since I only play 2 champions instead of learning too much of the champion pools.
Yeah. No. It's honestly fine. Like, honestly, the fastest way to climb out of bronze is to one trick. So if you just wanted to one trick a champ, that's even better. But
what one trick?
One tricking is literally just playing one champion every single game. And the theory there is that if you know how to play Sona into every single matchup, well then you just play Sona because you know every single matchup. And the idea is like if you just keep playing Sona, you'll get a lot more mastery on the champion. You'll start to understand every situation in regards to Sona. Because when you play Sona and then you switch the next game to Morgana, well, all the power spikes and moments in time that Sona's strong versus Morgana is weak, or Morgana is strong versus Sona is weak, they all shift. And so you're now basically playing a different style. And it's hard for the human mind to like switch styles like that, particularly when you're playing such a low volume of gameplay. It's very hard to expect yourself to perform at your highest level when you're constantly switching between very different champion play styles. Whereas, you know, a pro player or someone like me who's been playing the game for years, I can easily switch between champions because I've spent hundreds of hours on each of the champions I play. Whereas you've probably spent, 20, 30 hours on Sona, 20, 30 hours on Morgana. So it's like, of course, it's going to be a little bit harder for you to switch between champs.
Yeah, that's totally right.
Um,
I sometimes feel different, like when I switch to Morgana from Sona, I get a brand like what should I W or Q first?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
the stuff,
exactly.
animation of the attacks and everything.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. You're describing it perfectly.
Yeah,
Um,
understand. So what advice do you have for me? Do I need coaching at this time, or should I just play more games to get better at the game?
yeah.
What would your advice be?
So I honestly think you haven't hit like your natural skill ceiling yet. So I think you could go without coaching. But it seems like you've got a very curious mindset and you're asking a lot of questions that you're not going to be able to answer on your own. And you're already thinking about the game in quite a sophisticated way because of how you play Dota. But you've got this problem where you're like asking the right questions, but you don't know how to execute or answer the question. So that is where a coach would really help. But then again, you can probably keep stumbling through your rank games and climb out of bronze and, maybe get to mid silver without a coach. But you could probably get there a bit faster and learn less bad habits with a coach, if that makes sense. So you could go either way is what I'm trying to say. But it's really about how quickly you want to develop at the game and how quickly you want to become less frustrated at all these unknown questions that you can't seem to answer.
So if you say people at my current level, at my skill set,
Yep.
do you advise them to take coaching, or because I see a lot of people in my games level 300, level 400 as bronze,
Yeah.
where I'm level 35 and bronze 2. So
Yeah.
I don't get it. Is it because like is it because I come from Dota, I have the basic knowledge, or is it something I'm missing? They have it and I don't have it.
Look, again, I can't give you a correct answer there, but most likely, you just need to play more games. Like that's going to be your best friend. You playing more games and just getting yourself in more situations that you're uncomfortable with and that you're unsure about, that's when the human mind learns the most. When we're in situations we're not sure of, and then we go, okay, can I try this? No, that didn't work. Okay, cool. Can I try this? No, that didn't work. And then on your third attempt, you're like, okay, I'm going to do this differently now. And then it works. And then you remember that for the rest of your league career. You're like, okay, I can do this in this situation.
Right, I understand.
Yeah. So I would say this is what I'd recommend you to do. Let's build out a little plan for you. Okay. So next steps. I would say let's play. I would really like to see 30 ranked games on you. On Sona/Morg/new champ of your choice. And I would ideally like to see the 30 games on one of those champions. Like, literally just, you need to drill down and master the champion. I remember when I played Dota, I loved, like, Pudge. So I played heaps of Pudge. I don't know if he's still called Pudge. I played it when it was, like, a BattleNet.
Yeah, like Blitzcrank here. Blitzcrank.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I loved to play him. And then I played him for months, and then I got a bit bored, but I was really good at him. Then I changed to, like, I think it's Techies, the guy who, like, chucks all the mines down and can, like, kill himself.
That's like Timo, I think here. No.
Yeah, or, like, Ziggs, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I loved Meepo, the one where you can have multiple champions. And that there's no one really like that in ranked. But the point I'm getting at is, like, you should try and pick the champion you love the most at the moment and play 30 ranked games on them. So if it's Sona, if it's Morgana, or if you still need to find that champion, like maybe you want to play some Lux and see if you like her, you just really need to play 30 ranked games and get yourself a real measure of how good you are compared to every other player in League at the moment. Because you can't really get a good measure of your performance based on like 6 ranked games or 10 ranked games. You really need at least 30 to understand, okay, I've played 30 games in bronze. This is where I placed on this champion. So therefore you can start to gauge, okay, my Sona is kind of like a silver 4 average, as an example. And then I want...
Yeah,
Yeah?
Yeah, please go on, please go on.
Yeah, and so then once you get there, I want us to talk again and for you to come back, and I want to see what problems you're facing after that.
Okay, that brings me to one last question, if I may. In Dota, for example, any champion can be played in any role.
Mm-hmm.
So when I try that here, for example, I want to try Morgana mid.
Yep.
That doesn't seem to work. Like I get a lot of tilt from my team and everything. So does this concept work in League, or is it just not possible?
Um, it does work, but there's two reasons as to why it can work. So the first one is if you, let's say, had played Morgana for 400 hours in total, you could play Morgana mid quite easily. But you just simply haven't played enough Morgana mid or enough Morgana of the champion itself to understand how I can apply a support champion into the mid lane. Because you got to think about the game differently. You can't no longer be, just looking for a binding and never using your W to wave clear. When you're Morgana mid, you need to be maxing your W for wave clear, as an example. Whereas as Morgana support, you're maxing your Q because it's got more CC. It's got more crowd control. So it's about mastery of the champion. And then the second part is it's about playstyle, understanding that I need to play Morgana very differently to how I need to play support Morgana.
Right, that was the question.
Yeah. And also it's not optimal. So in League of Legends, we talk about things that are optimal and not optimal. So the meta is generally the most optimal way to play League of Legends. So if a champion is really busted in a role, that is technically the champion that, could win the majority of people the most games. But for an individual, it might not be. Because if Jarvan's the most OP jungler, but you don't know how to play him and you hate the champion's concept, well, you're not going to do very well on them. So it's not very optimal for you to play Jarvan, but it could be optimal for you to play Morgana. Whereas when we look at champions, every champion in League is designed to really fulfill a specific role in the game. And then whenever you deviate or try and change that role, they become a little less efficient, if that makes sense. So like when you put Morgana into mid, well, she's not as good as most other mid laners because she's not meant to be there. So things work a little bit less on her. So you're kind of putting yourself at a disadvantage. You can still make it work, but it's just a lot harder than, let's say, playing Ahri mid or playing Ziggs. Yeah. Cool.
So my next steps will be 30 ranked games on the street champion. I'll say the next champion will be Lux. I already saw a lot of Lux, and this will be my entry ticket for mid as well. Since Lux is a really good mid laner.
Yep. Play 30.
Yeah.
And try and, I would really recommend muting chat in your system settings. So, I'll show you how to do it now. You should not be reading chat. You mentioned chat and enemies flaming you way too much for my liking. You do not need to read chat as a new player because all it's doing is tilting you. And I can already tell in our conversations that you are not benefiting from having chat on.
No, sometimes even mute pings because even the pings can
Yeah. I'm going to show you right now, though, how to mute chat so you never see it again in League of Legends because you should not be looking at chat at all.
But would I not miss some important stuff?
No. And a bronze player is never going to tell you anything important in chat that they cannot communicate to you through pings. You want to do dragon? Cool, ping dragon. You want to do this? Cool, ping that. You can tell exactly what they want to do just by looking at the minimap and looking at where they're headed. You can tell, okay, cool, my mid lane is about to go and die here. Cool, I don't need chat to figure that out. Chat doesn't help, it just overwhelms and tilts people. I can't remember where it is exactly. In-game. So here you would just go to change chat visibility to pre-made only. And that setting will remove chat. And you don't have to do it, but I would highly recommend it because you're talking way too much about chat and how much it tilts you and other players that you should just remove it from your gameplay. But that's just my advice. You don't have to, but that's what I would recommend you should do.
Yeah, I'll do that actually. I
Yeah.
always wanted to do it, but
Yeah, and just give it a go.
I get
Yeah, give 10 games a go and see how it feels. Like, do you feel like you're missing out on key information, or does the game feel a lot clearer because you can actually think and you can be like less tilted because you're not aware of everyone just shit talking everyone. You're actually focusing on the game rather than the chat and what people are saying.
understand.
Cool.
I will try doing that.
Awesome. Right, yeah, so I'm going to see 30 ranked games, and then I think we talk again, and then figure out whether you need coaching or not after them.
But that will take some time because I usually don't. If I lose a game, I just stop playing till I get in the right mindset again. Because if I go in the wrong mindset, I'll not perform well.
Yep, that's fine. Just take your time and play as much, at a pace you're comfortable with.
Also, one more thing I want to ask, and I forgot. In League, I think it's like legal to Smurf, which was a big issue for me in Dota. So, do you advise that I make a new account and practice the champions there, or
Yes.
not?
Yeah, 2 account strategy. So it's a really good one for as well when you're feeling tilted and you don't want to play on your main. You should switch to your second account and just play a little tilted, but at least you can still play League if you feel like it. Because one of the things you need to do is get over this tilt mindset of being tilted after one game. And one of the ways it's going to help is firstly, understanding what you're doing wrong. But secondly, playing more games. You're going to start to realize that each win and loss isn't as important as you think it is. Right now, because you're only playing like 10 ranked games, every game feels so important because that game is 10% of your performance, or like, you know what I mean? Like when you only play 10 ranked games, every win or loss is so important because you only have 10 games that you've played. Whereas when you've played 100 games, well, that one win or that one loss, it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. And so you need to somehow learn to like get away from, I guess weighing each game so importantly or heavily. They're not that important. It's what's more important for you is just learning the game. You shouldn't really even be worrying about wins or losses yet because you're a newish player and you just need to learn the game and improve on the champions you're playing. And then the winning will come when you do that. So rather than focusing on the outcome that you don't have that much control of, which is whether you win or lose the game because there's 10 other players, control the thing you can control, which is your individual performance. Regardless of the win or loss, did I play well? And if you can also always answer that question as yes, you're eventually going to win more games than you lose. Some games you might realize that you played like really well, but you still lost because your team all fed. And that's going to happen. But you've got to be able to accept that and distinguish that from like, I played well, even though we lost, I played well. You shouldn't get tilted at that. You should be proud of that because you played well, even though your team was losing. And that's a really good sign that you're becoming a better player, as an example.